So section P4 is going to be cut into different sections. I don't want to overwhelm you guys. So it's going to be about quadratics. So we're going to, given a quadratic equation, you guys will be able to find the solutions. We're going to find the solutions by completing the square, by factoring, and by quadratic formula. So these are all things that you all should know how to do. Your study problems are these problems right here. They will also be on Canvas. So I'm going to go up so we can start working on this. The first one that we're going to do is by completing the square. So hopefully you remember, but the first thing you need to do, if you have a leading coefficient of 2, or any leading coefficient bigger than 1, you're going to factor it out from the first two terms. So I'm going to have 2x squared minus 4x. You're going to leave a space because you're going to find your new c, the one that makes it a perfect square trinomial. So then you have a negative 2 times whatever you put in this box right here, plus your 9 is equal to 0. This 2 is because I have to multiply whatever I have here. This is technically changing that number. So I actually, whatever number I find to put here, I have to make sure that I subtract it from the other side. So I'm going to get my middle term. You're going to get your b term. So it's negative 4 divided by 2 squared. That is negative 2 squared, which is 4. So right here, I have a 4. So now it's 2 times that 4. So over here has to also be 2 times that 4. And I'm going to subtract it because this is a positive 8. This has to be a negative 8. So you're not changing the problem. Once you have done that, now you could factor your perfect square trinomial right here and write it as a binomial squared. So now we're going to have 2 times x minus 2 squared minus 8 plus 9 is equal to 0. For the people who forgot, all you have to do is basically square that. You get your x, keep the sign of your middle term, which is negative, and square your last term, and you have that. Or just factor it out. Any perfect square trinomial, you could factor it into a binomial squared. The next step we're going to do is we're going to simplify. So we have x minus 2 squared plus 1 is equal to 0. 2x minus 2 squared is equal to negative 1. Divide both sides by 2, and you have x minus 2 squared is equal to negative 1/2. Then you're going to square root both sides. You have x minus 2 is equal to plus or minus I square root of 1/2. I'm hoping that you guys remember that if you have a negative inside of a square root, that technically is an I. So for the people who forgot, the square root of a negative 1 is I. So I literally took that negative and made it into that I. Now I'm going to go add 2 to both sides. And I always add my 2 in front of my plus or minus because I don't want to add it to the I square root. So my answer would be x is equal to 2 plus or minus I square roots of 1/2. That should be my answer. Since we are in pre-cal, we don't like to have something that looks like this. We like to rationalize it. So what we're going to do is we're not going to have a square root on the bottom. What I mean by that is this right here, this square root of 1 over 2 is the same thing as square root of 1 over square root of 2. I don't want to have a square root on the bottom. So that is going to turn into, I'm going to multiply top and bottom by square root of 2, and I'm going to get that is square root of 2 over 2. So my actual final answer, to make it nice and pretty, is going to be I square root of 2 over 2. The next problem is going to be quicker. So this one, all we have to do is factor. So we're going to write it as two binomials, a product of two binomials. We have two x's, so one x goes in the first binomial and one in the second binomial. And we have to figure out what two numbers multiply to my constant, but add up to my middle term. So the only two numbers that multiply to negative 3 and add up to 2 are negative 1 and positive 3. To double check, you're going to check your answers. You're going to multiply this becomes a negative 1x this one becomes a 3x. You should always check your answers just to make sure, because there's different possibilities. And you get 2x. So that is my middle term, so it works. Now that I have done that, I could split up and solve each binomial by using the zero product property that says anytime you have binomials being multiplied and equal to 0, you could separate them and solve for each one. So you have x minus 1 is equal to 0. Add a 1 to both sides, and you get x is equal to 1. Same thing for x plus 3. So you have x plus 3 is equal to 0. Minus 3 both sides. X is equal to negative 3. So that is your answer for that one. So this problem we're going to solve by the quadratic formula. Your quadratic formula is x is equal to negative b plus or minus your radical, b squared minus 4ac, all of that over 2a. So you need to first identify your a, your b, and your c. Those are the numbers in front of your terms. So your leading coefficient, the one with the x squared term, is your a. Your negative 2 is your b, and your c is your 8. Remember, it has to be in standard form. That means from highest exponent to no exponent, so it's from constant. Okay, once you do that, all you have to do is substitute in your values. I personally like to write all the stuff that's part of the formula and then just substitute in my values. That way I don't forget anything. So this is squared minus the 4 times my variables, or the numbers that go inside of it. Once I have that, all I do is substitute the values inside and make it very easy. So I know my b is a negative 2. I have 2 b's right here. I know I have an a that's here and on the bottom, and my c is 8. Once I have substituted, all I have to do is simplify. So now I have x is equal to positive 2 plus or minus your radical. Negative 2 squared is positive 4. Negative 4 times 3 times 8 gives me negative 96. All of that over 6. Now I need to simplify, so I'm going to have x is equal to 2 plus or minus 4 minus 96 is the square root of negative 92. And again, since I have a negative value right here, I know that that is the same thing as an I. So I'm going to have, and I almost forgot the 6. Then I'm going to have x is equal to 2 plus or minus I square root. And I know I could simplify 92. So the square root of 92 is the same thing as 4 times 23. 4 is a perfect square, so I know that square root of 92 is 2 square roots of 23. So now I have 2i square roots of 23 over 6. And if you notice, all of these three terms could be reduced by 2. So that means my final answer, I'm going to reduce all of these by 2. So I'm going to have x is equal to 1 plus or minus I square roots of 23 divided by 3. If you could reduce, you need to reduce. The last thing that I need you to copy is the different forms of quadratics. So we have the standard form right here, which is what we usually graph. We have our vertex form, and we have our intercept form. So copy those down. Make sure you go back and you remember these. We will be using them this whole semester.